Hello. Greetings.
I'll say good everything.
Every day.
You recovering from last week, huh? How did it go?
It was better than I expected, and also
Okay.
it made me have a tremendous amount of respect for my grandmothers.
Ooh, facts. Come on now. You better
My mama, I said it on the air, like my mother, we're talking china, crystal, the silverware, all the dishes,
we say all the dishes.
Yeah, and then
no rentals, huh?
nothing. And then the cleanup. I went through 3 dishwasher rounds.
Wow.
I said, hey, but 8 of us, like what?
Negroes can mess up a whole lot of plates, can't they?
And I didn't even do the full setting. Like you got a knife and a fork.
Well, hey, we was born with most of us with 5 of them on each hand. So I mean, I shouldn't say that, but I guess there's a reason why a lot of people now have gone to the paper and plastic plates, huh? But you didn't do that. You went to old school. That's beautiful. Yeah. That's beautiful. I
feel like we should, and there's a little feedback.
All right, let me. I hear it. I'm gonna mute myself while you talk. Go ahead.
I feel like we all should do things, difficult things, that we think other people do easy, just so that we can see how hard things are, so that we can have an appreciation for the hard things that people do. A lot of us have opinions about things we have never done or never tried, and we just have an opinion. I will never disrespect people that put together meals ever again. I'm not that I ever did. I always appreciated it. But my mother, God bless you, ma'am. I'm talking the baked macaroni and cheese, which I did not do. I'm talking the stuffing and all of the things. And she would even have a ham and salmon and all of the sides, everything she would do for 12 people with a children's table, and everything was flowing. And I was exhausted for 3 days afterwards. I had still have to take a nap. So
my God, not the children's table. You reminded me now, the children's table. Yes, indeed. Wow. Yeah, no, respect to everyone who does that and who does it consistently. And to those who do it more than just at those high holy day ritual days. I'm sure your mom laid out the occasional Sunday feast or the birthday feast. It's amazing what sisters do.
Kept the baseboards clean, dusted every Saturday. I had to get up. She would come in my room at like 7 o'clock, raise my blinds. I don't care what it was like, get up, clean the house, but those are the things that you learn. Good music, but you also learn how to keep everything, clean in your own house, laundry, everything. Saturdays, clean the house, then watch cartoons,
In fact, let me see. I'm looking for here it is. Looking for the bibliography, this incredible document that some of y'all, because we had a ghost in the machine on Monday, got a glimpse of in the larger world. Let me see. Clean Up Music. I'm wondering which episode was that? Is that going to be in this? This thing is like Ultron. I'm like, it can look up anything. Let's see here. That might have been, let me see, that might have been 156. Anyway, that's amazing to me. Well, you can ask that question of this document and go back to when we had that extensive conversation, which boiled over into a whole nother thing. But yeah, she kept those baseboards clean, huh? And made it nominally fun to do. Wow.
And work full time. So she wasn't just a house. Like,
wow.
I don't think we built for that now. Like, I don't think anybody. And yesterday, on my radio show, I've been starting to do stuff as I'm thinking and contemplating about how we throw ourselves into the future as they try to erase our present and our past. I was, pulling up these sayings, because we were talking about card playing. I had a brother on who's going to be at our Healthy, Wealthy, Wise Juneteenth in Galveston. And he's going to teach how to play bid whist, because I fear that game is going to go away. And that is a uniquely Black game. I know there's a version of it that came from Europe, but we made that game what it is. And that was where I learned about, Jerry Butler and Shirley Caesar at the card table with my mother and father and our family friend Shirley every Sunday with my young self, who tapped in because Shirley's brother Ronald passed away. He was my mother's partner, so they needed a fourth. And I had to sit at that table with them people but that's where I learned all of the things like my father would say as he was whooping our ass. If I don't win this, what is it? Grits ain't groceries, eggs ain't poultry, and Mona Lisa was a man. Or he would say something else, but Mona Lisa was a man. And I didn't realize, I Google searched, like, where the hell did he get that saying? Because I wanted to bring it to the radio. It was a song. It was Little Milton.
Little Milton. How about that? Let's just start right there. Oh, my goodness. So, you know what? Here it is.
I bring that up because the phone lines were lit for 3 hours with people bringing forth the sayings of their mamas, grandparents, those sayings. And it reminded me of the space that we're in every Saturday. That it's not just reclaiming our memory, it's not just learning some things, but we also have to impart it upon the next generation so these things never die.
That's right. And then we know that as teachers, the key thing is to connect what we know to what we don't know. So we start with what we know, and that is a true blessing. That's why being in community with each other and with is really the foundation for any act of memory keeping. We have to do that work. And so people remember that. And now here's something that ties to it that you might not remember or may not know. Oh, okay. Now it makes sense. It changes everything. So thanks to this wonderful searchable document that was actually episode 175, the 10th anniversary of Black Lives Matter. I was out in LA, and what music did you clean your house to? And because some kind of incredible way, the team has put together timestamps. That really takes place in the second hour for the most part, around 1 hour, 13 minutes, 29 seconds, and then coming on forward. I mean, again, I could just spend hours and hours going back through this because it's hours and hours of this conversation. And to your point, it's all interwoven with who we are to each other, and everybody in bring themselves as the brick. And so this conversation, bid, whist, and spades, we was in there too. But that was 175 for those you want to go into the archive. So man, this is going to be a hot time in the old town in Texas. As Malcolm would say, it's going to be a hot time in the old town. Wow. Down there near the Gulf of Mexico. That's going to be. So I imagine there are a lot of people still recovering. And of course, we didn't take a breath. We were here Monday night, still trying to figure out what happened. Did all these people coming in wreck StreamYard finally? We knew it was possible. You had to create a whole overflow room. What happened? For those who don't know, office hours, that's why you got a glimpse into something that we normally don't do, which is went live in YouTube, which you called that audible. Thank you for having that capacity and that quick thinking, because what is now 11,000 plus people have gotten a glimpse into something, many of them who are not yet in Nubia. Well, but we don't know what happened.
No, it was definitely a bug. But why then? Why at that particular time? It could have happened at any time, But I also think we did capture a lot of folk who didn't know what office hours was all about and was like, hey, what is this? What? This is a treat, And the tone was different. It's even different than Saturday. It was different because I was in that chat because I'm like,
I know you be. God bless you, because I'd be like, hey,
what y'all
it's just teaching experience for me. Let's have which you had to make sure that I understood differently on the radio a couple of weeks ago, because I'll turn it into, oh, you crazy? Let's talk. Like, wait, hold on, that's how this works.
No, we don't feed the trolls.
Lamont knows that well, so I'm glad he's sitting there, because for me, I'm like, I'll talk to a troll, because at some point you're gonna see you a troll, and more importantly, everybody else who is frustrated will understand this is how you make sure people stay out of your anyway. But I understand that's not it. But you be in that chat though. So Monday was different, huh?
That's our house. So coming in with dirty shoes and you throwing stuff around, littering and stuff, like somebody's gonna make sure that you leave properly, because there should be rules of engagement in a civil space where we are committed to doing something. We don't have to all be on the same page and agree 100%, or as you say, agree to agree. We're gonna have to find a way to dance with each other so that no one's feet get stepped on too hard. And if they do, we say sorry, but like I feel like we are in this wild, wild west of a society of like knuckle dragging folk that haven't been raised to clean baseboards or get up on Saturday and be in community or learn the proper way that we treat our elders and respect. You know, I was doing a little research on who we're going to talk about today, and he was graced with the honorific of Prof. And I felt warm because I'm like, you call me that, and it's different. It is different now that I know the depth of that.
Is the highest honorific for a teacher globally.
So thank you.
Thank you. That's the highest honorific. And Prof. Sobukwe is oh man, we'll talk about him today. He is one of the most important figures that we produced in the 20th century. And he is remembered in South Africa, but not nearly how he should be remembered. And that speaks to the ongoing challenge. We can't be African in the world. We simply can't, not even in Africa. We can't even be African in the world. I mean, you asked me when we came in, you know, oh, that's nice. What you have on? I said, I got this. You know, we support Black businesses, and there's brothers and sisters out of Texas, actively Black. We talked about them before too. During the Olympics, they outfitted these Black folk here in the United States, African people who have said we are Pan-African. So we support Black people everywhere. And while the United States had LeBron James and Simone Biles and all them drafted out in polo gear, Ralph Lauren, whatever, these Black folk got the contract with Africans from the continent. And so the Nigerian Olympic team was outfitted by African people here in the United States. It's a beautiful moment. And they have these sales from time to time. I got a nice bag, actively Black, because you know I keep backpacks. They got a whole line. I don't know how they negotiated this with Marvel, called Wakanda Athletics. So I got like a cap from them. But then I looked on there, of course, this whole Santa Claus bye, and it was Cyber Monday, and they had a sale, and they had some of the Nigerian Olympic team gear. So I said, oh, let me give me a little trust. So, you know, I'm repping Nigeria today. But Sobukwe's thing was, we are Africans wherever we are in the world. And that was such a threat to the world, as you saw.
I wanted to ask you that. And by the way, the global majority is also Black owned. So y'all could
no. This is what I'm saying. You know, it was my next breath. Freedom ain't is that drop over the freedom?
No. It's there. No, and I don't say that to be, you know, gratuitous, but that
I'm not being gratuitous. I'm saying support Black businesses. Yes,
intentional. Because I'm gonna go get that. You know, it's like we feel like we can only do one thing. You know, I've had Damon John on. Like, it's important that we all know, because we wear clothes every day. Like, we can support every day somebody different that's Black. It's not a hard thing to do, you know. So I'm just saying that.
No, but you were about to say, you were talking about when Sobukwe was talking about, you know, we're Africans wherever we are.
You have changed and shifted. Like, I think I've always kind of been in this Pan-African mode, primarily because my father was a Kwame Nkrumah like stan. Like, he loved him some Kwame Nkrumah.
He was one of Sobukwe's comrades, no question.
And couldn't wait to go to Ghana. Like, that was his thing, right? So, you know, and as I mentioned before, Sada Shakur was in, you know, books about, you know, all of this was in my house. So I grew up not making a distinction between Black people born here. But he would also have his bigotry, because he would call people coconuts too. So I was confused. Yeah, he was like. So it's like we have these baked in biases against other people. You know, like if it was a Liberian, so why are you back here? You would sit there. You know, it's like he would have these wild things, and at the same time be fiercely Marcus Garvey. Like, he had all the Marcus Garvey. Like, we are so complicated.
Yes. In fact, Bobby Wright, the great psychologist out of Chicago by way of Alabama, Bobby Wright used to say the one contradiction in the Black community is there are no contradictions. He said that's the single. I remember listening to a Bobby Wright speech one time. I don't know where he was. He might have been in New York at First World, but he was like, you know, we can be in this room talking black, and we got to be black, be black, blah, blah. And the person leading the conversation after he finishes will leave the podium and walk right down the middle of the aisle and leave with the white woman on his arm. And no one will say anything, because the one contradiction in the Black, which is that a contradiction? Is it not a contradiction? I mean, Oh my God. You know, this is the birth month of Yosef Ben Yakinen, who was hell on interracial relationships. Dr. Ben didn't want to hear it, didn't want to talk about it. And one of the great towering figures of the 20th century, born in Senegal, 1926, check out the joke, married to a white woman. This French woman who, you know, and Dr. Ben would be quick to bring that up. So we're going to throw away perhaps the most towering intellectual of the century of any racial background because he was married to a white woman, and no, we're not going to do that. I mean, it's, you know,
walk me through it, because I feel like it undermines, you know, which is why, like, even during this election cycle, people blah 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 blah, and then they took money, like a lot of money, and it's like, how do I reconcile with that? And it builds kind of this distrust, because now you don't expect anybody to be honorable to the things that they say. So that's why I'm almost to a fault, like super consistent, you know, or I try to be, and I'm constantly checking myself. But maybe that's not right either. Maybe we should be more flexible and be more like water or like bamboo. Like, where should we land on these things? Because it bothers me. Let me just say, it's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow when I find out something that doesn't line up with what people have been saying out of their mouths.
Absolutely.
Then it does undermine a little bit. It's like, how can you go so hard, and then at night this is what you do?
Well, I'll say this, having you know, I'll never forget the first time I taught David Walker's Appeal at Howard. I want to say, anyway, I taught it before, but this never happened to me in this way. We were in a circle.
David Walker's Appeal.
David Walker's Appeal, of course, as we know, the 1827 document by David Walker out of Massachusetts, where he makes an appeal to he calls it an appeal to the colored race, the colored people of the world, where he's basically saying that we need to rebel. He claims Christianity as his way of knowing, and he says that these people who we are calling Christians are not Christians, but in fact the devil, and you're under religious obligation to resist these people, and your motto has to be resistance. So in the process of that, he's talking about our condition, and he says we're in wretchedness because of the condition we're in. So in many ways, he's framing what we might call now in this African studies framework a social structure critique. And I am in a circle. This is back when my classes, so this was very early on, when they could still fit in one little room, and I had about 30 students. We all in a circle, and so I'm having them going around reading. And I'll never forget when you get to the point, because, you know, David Walker was writing in that 19th century style where they put stuff in italics for emphasis. So he's talking about, he gets to the point where he starts talking about relationships between the sexes, women and men. And he has a line in there in italics that said, I would not give a pinch of snuff. And he's got pinch of snuff in italics for any white woman that I have ever seen in all the days of my life. He's got this written in, I would not give, and he got pinch of snuff in there. And so not only did some of these students not know what a pinch of snuff was, but that became irrelevant because this uproarious laughter rippled through the classroom, because that passage had been read by this young woman, this sister, and it was a sister sitting next to her. And I promise you, I don't even remember what the gender breakdown was. I don't remember what the boys in the room did. Those girls laughed so hard. And then they insisted on reading it again. And I said, well, now we got to pause. We got to, it was like when we were doing Du Bois. I told you a story before. We were doing Du Bois in a little reading group I had that did Du Bois. This is a separate group. They want to talk about Du Bois. Fine. I'll meet y'all after class. We'll sit up and read Du Bois. Talk as long as y'all want. And it's about 8 of us in the library. And Du Bois talks about when he was a youngster in school, how they were giving out Valentine's cards, and his card got rejected by the white girl he gave the card to. And so I said, yeah, Du Bois, man, these white girls were fascinated with Du Bois. And then started talking about these other white women, Mary White Ovington, all people in his life. And then this young brother, Jason Rabin, who's now a professor, he was teaching down at Texas Southern, last Dr. Rabin. I said, does anybody in here know that white girl? Jason looked up. I know that white girl. So, do you know that white girl? He said, I know that white girl. And then all the dudes was like, I know that white girl. And the women were like, what are y'all talking about? I said, tell them what you talking about. Is it That's that white girl that love little black boys. Be sitting next to you in the 2nd grade, always want to kiss you on the cheek. When then you want to take her home, your mom like, what? Don't you? What? Who is this? Do you know that white girl? In other words, but this is complicated. Right? We live in a society where black people are objects. We're fetish objects, and it's very easy to get pulled in. And then you show up with a white woman or a white man for whatever reasons. I don't care whether you're Serena Williams or Shake Out the Joke. It's like, why are you with this white person? I don't know. I think it's more complicated than just the straight ideological.
No, it is. I mean, Harry Belafonte. It's like,
or yay. I mean,
it's
and beginning with black women, then going to white women. Now that I think now we got a little bit different conversation. Wait a minute, Clarence. I mean, Harry. Sydney. All 3 of them, starting with black women. You know, the long list. The list gets longer. Does it go the other way? Do you start with a white woman and then go to a black woman? I'm trying to think of who did that.
And
I don't know. Or go back to it. Well, let me not do that because
a
lot of people's business is right out here in these streets right now.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But ideological, you know, Robert Sobukwe met my Veronica, his wife, when they were very young. And they stayed together until the day he died. And she only made transition fairly recently.
Wow.
You know, there is one of the reasons why they loved Sobukwe so much is because he was so principled. Robert Sobukwe would get on a train and talk to everybody. He had a college degree. Robert Sobukwe was a professor at Witwatersrand. At the time, black people weren't even allowed to go to school in those places. And yet when he would get on the train, he wouldn't sit in the section where the doctors and a handful of lawyers like Nelson Mandela, Sisulu, and them. He would go to where they were playing cards in the place where the police would come in, where y'all pass at, where y'all dumb pass. And Sobukwe would be with those people, smoking his pipe, talking smack while they throwing cars down on the. I mean, this is the integrity.
In the chat, Russell Wilson, which is why he's having a successful year, even though I'm not watching football.
And I know that's right. Come on, Russ, do that, brother. Okay, I didn't know that.
And showing what fatherhood looks like. Yes, that is complete shade.
Yeah. Right. No, you turn on the light. Well, I guess you wouldn't have shade if there weren't light. So when you turn the light, shade is necessary. That's what happens. When you turn the light, things get thrown in the shade. So, you know what I'm saying? Okay, good, Russell Wilson. But that integrity, I don't think that's for everybody. And we start talking about guerrilla warfare, whether it be Samora Machel in Mozambique, whether it be Agustin Neto or Amilcar Cabral in Guinea-Bissau. What does it mean when we do have people who live their lives in a certain way that you won't find any contradictions? And that those people we have to protect. Because if we're not going to do it, then the least we can do is protect the people who will live their lives that way. I mean, I can't ever. One of my favorite photographs of John Clark is the one that our brother Chester Higgins, who's there in Brooklyn, who's from Alabama, went to Tuskegee. Baba Chester took of him where he's sitting there with his hand on his chin. See that frayed suit jacket and shirt. John Clark ain't spend money on clothes. He spent money on books. I identify with that completely. And people will say, well, you know, you should, you know, do this. Look, don't bother me because the things that you think that are valuable that I might have to say or contribute come from a lifestyle that you might think is a sacrifice, but I don't live it as a sacrifice. To me, this is an honor and a blessing. People say, well, you shouldn't live like a monk. Well, yeah. Do you go to church? Yeah. You good Catholic, huh? You know, you go to the priesthood. You wouldn't do that, would you? No. Yeah, but you go there and you tell that priest your deepest secrets because this person took a vow and said, I don't care what you say to me, I can't tell nobody. Now, do you want them to be like you? Right. Because your whole business will be, not that it isn't in the street because we're on the internet, which means everybody's business is going to be in the street at some point. But the whole idea of sacrifice, Du Bois talks about this. He says, if we want to make advances, there must be sacrifice. Now, I don't look at my life as a sacrifice. It's quite comfortable to me. It just so happens that it coincides with things I think that need to be contributed. But are there contradictions? We all have contradictions.
Yeah.
We all have vices. So,
I just wish more people would spend more time on their lives instead of others people's lives. Like, we have so much, and even this conversation is a little judgy on my part, and so I have to work on that. But like,
we all
why do we care? Why do we care what other people are doing in their lives? Are you doing the things that you need to do? And if the answer is no, then work on that, because I don't really even care about Sierra and Russell or we spend a lot of time. I talk about these things because it's radio, Jonathan Majors or whatever, but I really don't care at the source. So, this work actually, and this is where I was going, like, you have forced me to center what needs to happen next. And I'm so eternally grateful because the road is very clear now. Before I was doing things, and I think they were important things, but now I'm doing important things for a time I won't be here. And I'm really, really excited about that. And maybe no one will even know that has something to do with it, but I feel real good about the work that you're doing, that we're doing.
We're doing. Yeah. And you are always doing for the future. It may not have been readily apparent, but one of the blessings of being able to be in community is that we get to hold up mirrors. We get to hold up mirrors for each other, and we can see that we are doing this work. And it's very, very, very important and necessary. And without it, we're not going to get where we say we need to go. So, as we continue today for a few minutes, here we are in the first week of December, at the end of the first week of December. And the 5th of December marked the 100th anniversary of the birth of Mangaliso Robert Sobukwe. Mangaliso Sobukwe is a revolutionary Pan Africanist. He is one of the founders of the Pan Africanist Congress of Azania, which is what they call South Africa. It's a governance term for South Africa. They did not call the country South Africa in terms of their vision of where this criminal enterprise called South Africa would go in the future. And I say criminal enterprise because those lines were drawn artificially. The first invaders in 1652, as is taught to every South African school child, Jan van Riebeeck, the Dutch East India Company coming into the southern part of Africa, and the rest becomes history. Ultimately, the settlers, the Dutch, the so-called Boers, the British coming in, the most famous or most infamous of which, of course, is the criminal named Cecil John Rhodes. Some Negroes still beam with pride when they win or know somebody that won a Rhodes Scholarship. And instead of immediately condemning that, perhaps even while keeping the money, who knows? Contradictions abound. They bask in it. I've had a couple of students who won Rhodes Scholarships during the time I've been at Howard. And in fact, one of the most touching moments that I've experienced in the almost quarter century now that I've been a teacher at Howard University is seeing some of those students come together with all the living Rhodes Scholars of African descent, most of whom contributed for a burial plot for the first Rhodes Scholar of African descent. And that, of course, was Alain Leroy Locke. They paid for a burial plot, as I've told that story before, at the Congressional Cemetery here in Washington, D.C. And you all remember one Saturday I was there, and I looked in the database to get the number of the day that I was there to speak actually at Alain Locke's gravesite, because I was honored to be with a number of others at the gravesite of Alain Leroy Locke for his funeral, because he was cremated. His mother's remains had been moved from Washington, D.C. and unceremoniously dumped in a new cemetery because of real estate violence, as Lamont King would say. And they didn't know exactly where his mother's remains were. He wanted to be buried there with her. And not failing that, the family that got control of his physical remains, his friend Arthur Huff Fawcett, and then from the Fawcett's down through the years, through generations, ultimately his ashes were in Philadelphia, and they returned to D.C. through a family friend and a member of the faculty at the time at Howard University, J. Weldon Norris, who was actually the director of choirs for many years at Howard. And then they sat at Howard University for a number of years until it was discovered that he was still there. His physical remains were still there, and there was a debate on what to do with them. And ultimately, The debate was resolved when Kurt Schmoke, my friend Kurt Schmoke, at the time, well, he was the dean of Howard University School of Law, and then he moved over to senior administration at the university. And when Schmoke found out, he went into action. This man, of course, who at one time was the mayor of Baltimore, and before that, the youngest state's attorney in the history of the state of Maryland, Kurt Schmoke was like, nah, this ends today. So he made a call, and the Black Rose Scholars got together, and they put the money together, and they got a plot in the Congressional Cemetery. And early one Saturday morning, we went out to the cemetery and watched and participated in. Each person got to dig a little, had a little silver spade, and dug a little bit and put some dirt in the grave of Elaine Locke. So I helped bury Elaine Locke, but that plot was paid for by Black Rhodes Scholars, and they wear the name of a criminal. Cecil John Rhodes, a criminal who invaded Southern Africa, who wanted to build a railroad from Cape to Cairo and take out all the resources of Africa. There's a famous drawing of him standing astride Africa with one hand in Egypt and the other foot on South Africa and a big cable, because he's going to build a railroad from Cape to Cairo and take everything out of Africa. By the way, that's why Joe Biden was in Angola. He wasn't there because he loves Africa so much. He was there because they trying to get to Angola and build a big ass 800-mile railroad so they can get some more stuff out of Congo to the port. And so, you know, the first time they came, they took us, which Biden actually, in terms of remarks on what happened to African people as a result of the largest forced human trafficking, largest act of human trafficking in human history, he made the most advanced remarks of any U.S. president that I am aware of, including the Chocolate Wonder, when he talked about what happened to African people. Now, of course, for him to stand in Africa and talk about Black America that way seemed a little off. That's what happens when you have DEI in your speech writing core, but not DEI with cultural awareness. He got a few facts wrong and some things like that. But the point is, they still trying to take stuff out. First time they took us out, then they went to get stuff and take stuff out, and they still doing that. And the United States trying to catch up to China, which it will never do, never be able to do. The Chinese are laughing. Even at this point. I mean, of course, you saw this week that they said, oh, Donald Trump gonna threaten some, what? Oh, Biden, you gonna help? Oh, no problem. Okay, here go 4 or 5 minerals that we gonna stop sending y'all. How them computers working? Cell phone, hello. Yeah, so, you know, Xi Jinping just sent a little warning shot. If y'all want to do this dance, maybe you can get your drunk friend to be the Secretary of Defense, and you think you're gonna have a military invade us, or you're gonna, well, no problem. Let's just take these strategic minerals away, and then maybe your devices don't work. But those minerals, China has been heavily invested for decades in taking them out. Coltan and cobalt and copper, those 3 C's that come out of Central Africa. And also there are deposits in Angola along with oil. So Biden wasn't in Angola to be friends with Africa. He's there because you got to invade and continue this thing. But that goes back to even before, but certainly a watershed moment. It's Cecil John Rhodes stride Africa from Cape to Cairo on a railroad to get all this stuff out. And so the Rhodes Scholars who paid for Elaine Locke's funeral and his grave and his beautiful Black headstone, well, they wear the name of a criminal. And in South Africa, there's a Rhodes University where Mangaliso Sobukwe was offered a faculty position if he would just tone down this Africanist rhetoric. And of course, he didn't take it. Hell, he lost his job at a high school to the students, and the community protested, and he got reinstated because he was in the Pan Africanist Congress. We'll come to Sobukwe in that context in a moment. But there is a Rhodes University in South Africa, the University of Cape Town, where every time I have taken students to South Africa, which is, I think, 4 or 5 times, I've lost count. Haven't done it in the last decade and probably won't do it again, but maybe we'll go. You know, if y'all interested in going, we'll be in Kemet. The information is out now. It's being circulated. The study tour, first 2 weeks of August, as always, in Kemet. There's been some talk about going to Ghana. I love South Africa. I mean, I love Africa, period. I'll go anywhere in Africa. I love African people. I'll go anywhere African people are. I don't care. But that's for those who think, oh, well, I was talking about going to Africa. We got problems here. Yeah, ain't nobody ever said that we didn't, and ain't nobody ever said that you can't do everything all the time. Everybody calm down. But at any rate, maybe we'll go back to South Africa. But every time I've gone with students, we stay in hotels. We didn't stay in hostels. We didn't stay with homestay visits with families in the community. We stayed on college campuses. Every time we've gone, we stayed at the University of Cape Town when we were in Cape Town, and many times the University of Johannesburg when we go to Joburg. And every time we're at the University of Cape Town, one of the first things that I do or have done is remind or inform for our students, inform them where we were. Cecil John Rhodes, the criminal, claimed a great deal of what we call South Africa as his personal property, including the land that comes down off of what they call Table Mountain. Many people here have been to Table Mountain. Certainly Jack Cole is in here, who's in South Africa as we speak. You know well about this. And that property, he ceded a fraction of it to build what became the University of Cape Town. So that land actually is land that this thief tried to appropriate for himself, Cecil John Rhodes. And there was a statue of Cecil John Rhodes that was on that campus for many years. And sometimes we would stay in Jan Christian Smuts Hall. Some of y'all know Jan Christian Smuts. Smuts is one of the devil doers who toured the United States and looked at the way that African people were treated here and how the United States created laws against us as one of the ways of dealing with Black folk that he then took back to South Africa. There's a real intimate relationship between the social structures of South Africa and the United States, as we've talked about, but we're not here today to talk about that. But we stay in Smuts Hall at the University of Cape Town. Every morning I get the papers, as I've told y'all many times. It'd be dark. I go down, walk down the Rondebosch Road, drink a couple of cups of coffee, sit with people and talk, read the papers, and then come back, take a shower. And by then, students are ready, and then we go to class, and then we go out and do what we're going to do the rest of the day. But in walking down that mountain, that foothill of the mountain, down to the road every morning in the dark, I would pass the statue of Cecil John Rhodes and pay respects. Left a lot of DNA on that statue over the years. And but I can't do it anymore. Why? Because a few years ago, the students of South Africa, the African students of South Africa at the University of Cape Town looked at that same statue I would look at every morning and say, Rhodes must fall. Oh, Rhodes must fall. And they raised so much hell that they had to take that statue down. I don't know where the hell it is now. I mean, maybe like the white nationalists of South Africa, shout out to Elon Musk, and the white nationalists of the United States, shout out to Elon Musk, who they take their monuments on to private territories, private property, so they can continue to worship their gods. But wherever it is, it ain't on the campus of the University of Cape Town anymore. And then once the students got the statue, they said, oh, it was never just about the statue. That's just as simple. Now that Rhodes has fallen, fees must fall. Why are we paying so much damn tuition? In fact, these salaries of the women and men who clean up these dormitories, these sisters and brothers, these Xhosa and Swana and Sotho and Zulu who come here and clean, their salaries must raise. In fact, we all together, fees must fall or shut down the country. So what did South African government do? These Black people, Negroes, had to put a cap, freeze a cap. I think Jacob Zuma was in. I saw Jacob Zuma got put out the ANC formally a couple of days ago. Oh, well, but Zuma had to freeze the fees. Why? Because these young people had enough. And so I'm just thinking about all that because language is important. Names are important. These memories get baked into our collective consciousness. And next thing you know, they'll have you worshiping your open enemy. And that's a contradiction that we cannot stomach. It's one thing to be in an interracial relationship. It's another thing to be in an interracial relationship with your abuser. And that's exactly what you are when you wear the Rhodes name. You're in an interracial relationship with your abuser. And unlike many interracial relationships, when you go look for help, the people keep telling you should stay because that's not your abuser, that's your patron. You're a Rhodes Scholar. Anyway, Robert Sobukwe was faced with often many of those choices, whether to go with these abusers or not, whether to compromise or not, whether to play the game or tell the truth, whether to play that game or tell the truth. And 100 years ago, on December the 5th of this month, December 5th, 1924, Robert Sobukwe was born in South Africa. Born to humble parents, laborers, born to rise to one of the central figures, and perhaps there is a case to be made, so we'll talk about in a minute in passing, perhaps the most important single figure at the time that he lived and was active, particularly in his youth, for advancing the struggle that killed formal apartheid. Not Nelson Mandela, not Walter Sisulu, not Oliver Tambo, all very important. Not Winnie Mandela, not Ma Sisulu, not Ruth First, not Joe Slovo, not Ahmed Kathrada, not Chief Albert Lufuli, who won the Nobel Prize. Talk about Albert Nobel another day. All of these are very important figures. So you've got to at least put Sobukwe's name, not Desmond Tutu. You've got to at least, not Alan Bozak, who is, of course, a major figure, still with us, very good friend and comrade and deep supporter of Reverend Jeremiah Wright. He's probably with us this morning. You've got to at least put Sobukwe's name in the first rank with them. Steve Biko, you got to put Robert Sobukwe's name right with them. And when you get them all together, if you had to pick one, one who would go back to A.P. Mada, one that would go back to Anton Mbedi, one that would go back to the Black Consciousness Movement, and before that, John Dubé, and before that, then to the pre-invasion fighters, Shaka, Siswayo, to those who faced down the invaders. Sobukwe is in the first rank, might be at the top. There's a case to be made 100 years ago, 1924, Robert Sobukwe was born. And so Friday night at Sankofa, there was a showing of a film that I waited a long time to see, a decade to see, because it hasn't been reproduced. It's not streaming. There's no DVDs for sale. And it shows when you can catch it. And I've never caught it in the United States. I remember when it came out in 2013. I was like, man, I got to see this. It's called Sobukwe, A Great Soul. They showed it last night. They showed it last night at Sankofa. Shout out to the All African People's Revolutionary Party. Shout out to the Pan African Community Action Organization. My man, Nefta Friedman. Shout out to Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League of the World, the DC branches of the UNIA, ACL. Shout out to the Malcolm X grassroots movement and to the Black Alliance for Peace. Positive Productions Incorporated. My friend and sister Katia Stitt moderated the conversation that took place after or with one of the filmmakers, actually, Mickey Madoba Dube, who zoomed in from South Africa, where it was like 2-3 o'clock in the morning when he came in. He pulled a Baba Oz and talked with us after the screening. It was packed to overflow capacity. Good to see my man Paul Coates, who's always at everything, and to see in person Milton Alamadi, Baba Adesoje and Mama Aya, of course, y'all know him well. You can see Adesoje and Milton Alamadi consistently on Adesoje Speaks Knowledge, the YouTube broadcast, which keeps us deeply abreast of what's going on the African continent and beyond. So saw Baba Milton last night. My man Mwise Mutali, for many years, who was the archivist and kind of intellectual pole in terms of record keeping, information keeping, gathering, culture meaning making at Trans Africa with Randall Robinson. Weezer was there. They do the African Film Festival here in the DC area every year. And so it was good to see them. And we got to see, finally, Sobukwe, A Great Soul, the only documentary film on Robert Sobukwe to go all the way through his life. There are reenactors, the brother they got to play Robert Sobukwe, because there has not yet been found 1 second of 1 minute of 1 hour of one lifetime of recordings. We have not yet found the voice of Robert Sobukwe. Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe, 1924, he was born, made transition in 1978, was surveilled almost his entire adult life. Relentless surveillance, and not one second of his voice. He destroyed all of it. It wasn't Mandela. It wasn't Sisulu or Tambo that they were scared of more than Mangaliso Sobukwe. And as we talk about him, born in a place called Grafrenet. Grafrenet. Grafrenet is a place in South Africa where they say famously, even the dogs bark in Afrikaans. Even dogs bark in Afrikaans. He was born in the heart of a criminal enterprise, but in the heart of the criminal enterprise, Grafrenet. And Sobukwe was so terrifying to these white boys. The things he endured in his life, which we'll talk about in a moment. Again, this is we're kind of evoking one of the elements of our weekly convenings that we do every week, but we're centering this week, which is a bit of a you should know, on Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe. So, we're going to talk about his life, but we wanted to begin with that in part because this guy was so remarkable. So we'll pause here and then come back through and we'll rejoin Sobukwe in a moment. As I said, Monday night, as we said at the beginning, Monday night was quite an experience. The tech glitches, ghost of the machine, bugs, something that never happened before, threw us off a little bit. For those of you who got your first taste of office hours, which we do in Nubia every Monday, 8 to 10 Eastern time, we were able to get that going by, Prof. Hunter came in and said, hold on, let's do this, let's move this, let's do this, boom. And then we went live in YouTube. And then all of a sudden, StreamYard decided they want to act okay. All right. But then we still continued in YouTube. So as a result, if you've never experienced what we do, a taste of what we do, because it was just a taste, because we usually do an hour in, of course, we're in our second iteration of the Introduction to Africana States course. So we did some of that on Monday, and we did that exclusively because what we would normally do.
Can I just say, before you continue, your masterful pivot, people don't even know. Like, I got to witness, because you had a whole game plan, and the way you pivoted seamlessly, no one even could tell that there was a whole other different thing. I said, this man is masterful.
Oh, no, thank you, Prof. From one teacher to another. Thank you. Because we know that's what we do. We teachers. And that, I'm glad. Thank you, Prof, actually, for saying that. I mean, not only for saying it just for the sake of saying it, I really am deeply grateful, because it reminds me of all of my teachers, and I'm sure your teachers and all of our teachers who have game plans. For every teacher who comes into a classroom and then there's no chalk or there's no paper, and now what the hell okay, let's all get in a circle. I mean, this is what we do. But also for this reason, John Clark used to say this all the time, and it's related, but in a kind of tangential way, but it's an opportunity to reiterate this point. John Clark would say, when you are in an intellectual fight, you don't have time, and you can't go back to the library and pull some books or do some research when you're in the middle of it. You right there. You can't go look at your notes. No. He said, you got to keep your library in your head. So there are many things that stick with me, kind of like as anchor posts in terms of how I live my life. There's no more important anchor post than that. And at any moment when I enter a space and feel like I'm underprepared, which is every moment, including this one, because almost all the things that I would draw on to talk about Robert Sobukwe are in storage. But there are some things that I kind of keep around, and then there's the serendipity or the ancestral intervention that allowed me to say, okay, oh wait, this is still here. So I got some posts. But the point is that I don't need to go get them, because they're in my head enough to string them together. And on Monday night, when it was like, oh, the tech didn't work here. Okay, let's move forward. What do we have? We have the central thing that makes everything work all the time, which is what? We have each other. And once you work the tech out, then we just continue. And that's not a problem, because you can't prepare on the day. You got to spend your life preparing. And then at that moment, you show up. And I always had to remind myself of that at moments, every time. that I'm in public dialogue and we're in spaces, I have to remind myself that however unprepared I might feel at any moment, and I think there's a level of unpreparedness that we all feel when we practice a craft. There's an incompleteness, and as the Egyptians would say in the book of Tao-Tep, the limits of one's craft are never reached. So you can never perfect the thing. It's always working. Sadly, in the contemporary world, we seem to have centered throwing around balls as the metaphor for that, which is credible, which is important. It's an important metaphor for mastery. But whenever you center Kobe Bryant practicing 1,000,000 times, or Michael Jordan practicing 1,000,000 times, or Venus Williams hitting a ball 1,000, 100,000 million times, instead of reading 100,000 million times, or repeating in a craft involving a different type of intellectual work 100,000 times, then you understand the impact of this social structure on us. So we can imagine the same thing that would allow Tiger Woods to look like he's performing magic on a golf course is the same thing that would allow us to pivot on a Monday night. Repetition, practice, deep study, and then, oh, boom, okay, no problem, let's do this. Why? Because the thing that hasn't been displaced is the one factor that always makes everything work, which is what? The human factor. And so, yes, thank you. And it's an opportunity to reinforce that. You got to keep your library in your head. You got to keep those tactics in your head. You got to keep those experiences in your head. And on a scale to 1 to 1,000, that was about a 1 based on things that can happen to teachers. And we've all been in that if we've been teachers. Anyway, yeah, I'm gonna say it because it needs to be said. Plus, I work at a place where infrastructure at least doesn't appear to be priority if you're going by action, not words. And so anytime you walk in a space where nothing works, then you got to be equipped to come in thinking that nothing's going to work. It's kind of like what happens when you're in places where scarcity has been centered. We got to do something about that, by the way. So go ahead.
No, I'm not saying a word. I'm being quiet. Oh, you're muted. Now you're muted.
Oh, my bad. Because Monday night, thank you. We got a small taste of what we do in Nubia. And so, like I said, to the thousands who have watched since, you got a taste. And I'd ask you to compare that as well as to where we were in March 2019. Because this March, it'll be 5 years since we started on this dimension of this larger work. And like you, Prof, I'm eternally grateful for this work because like I say, last night, it wasn't just, Baba Milton and my man Paul and all of them who were there, and Brother Dubé coming in from South Africa, Katia. It was so many Nubians there. And with so many people, including people who knew Ma Sobukwe, knew Robert Sobukwe's children, Robert Sobukwe and Veronica Sobukwe's children, who are Nubians. And I mean, it never ceases to, we can't really quantify because this society, a lot of it's driven by numbers and what people think numbers mean. But if we could get a number, I'm sure it would leave us mute because it leaves me mute every time to see people who oh yeah, wow, this is I just some of those people may be here. If you are, let people know. One of our brothers who of course has been a faithful Nubian since day one, since you said, can I press record? And we went on the beginning of this journey. Our brother, Baba George, of course, George Johnson, the the cultural meaning maker, the legendary cultural meaning maker, the comrade of and performer with everybody from Sonny Stitt and Sonny Rollins all the way through, whether you want to talk about Quincy Jones, whoever you want to talk about, George Johnson is not only a walk-in, talk it, as he says, walk spirit, talk spirit, to evoke ways of knowing, example of quest for perfection in the cultural meaning making form that we typically call jazz, a lyricist by chosen profession. So you mentioned George Johnson in the same breath as Eddie Jefferson, who he knew, as John Hendricks, who he knew. George Johnson is with us walking on top of the ground, but the ground he's walking on right now is not in the United States. George Johnson on Tuesday night left for Ghana. And George Johnson lives in Ghana now, Prof. Hunter. He has set up an educational foundation where he is teaching young people through music, history, and culture. And he is set up in Ghana. He's got his place set up. Shout out to Joni Eisenberg, another Nubian who faithfully is here every Saturday, who takes selections from our Saturday work and broadcasts it from time to time on WPFW. who had a whole hour. If y'all go and listen to Heal DC on WPFW, all the stuff is archived at WPFW.org, the Pacifica station here in Washington, D.C. You can hear Joni's show this past Monday, to Heal DC, and Baba George Johnson, a Nubian, faithful Nubian, who actually wrote a song. Remember, Prof. Hunter? Nubia, Knarrative will set us free. George Johnson in Ghana. He's not playing. You see, there's talking about it and there's doing it. Now, that doesn't mean he won't go back and forth, but he is now headquartered in Ghana, and he is spreading this educational foundation, and he hopes to spread it all over the African continent. But we're starting with Ghana, so I wanted to mention that.
I call him Tahir's daddy, because his son is a cannabis entrepreneur under Wanda James's tutelage, and they're in Jersey with their cannabis business. So he will be going back and forth because he's Tahir's daddy. So he will be back to support his baby. And I love that family.
I know that's right. See this. Anytime we hear this, it reminds me of Hannibal that freak, Baba Hannibal, now an ancestor, the master teacher out of Chicago. Well, Harold Charles, formerly out of Mississippi, then Chicago. Anytime I hear something like that, anytime we hear that, Baba Hannibal would hear that, and he would just put his hand down and he'd look up and say, "We will win. We're going to win." That we're going to win. It's inevitable. That was the enthusiasm of Mangaliso Sobukwe. That was the enthusiasm of Robert Sobukwe. We will win. And that's what scared the hell out of a power structure that did everything it could, short of immediately killing him. Although I am thoroughly convinced, along with everybody else, that he was killed by the South African government, but not by abusing him as his friend and young comrade Steve Biko was by the South African police. Immediately, he was killed the long range. He died of cancer in 1978, but he died of a disease which, had he received treatment, had he been able to escape, as he tried once, to get out of South Africa, had the South African government allowed him to leave, which is, who knows how long he would have lived. This June, inshallah, Baba Reba Kelsey will be 100 years old, June 2025. Robert Sobukwe would have been 100 day before yesterday. And so who knows how long he would have lived, but he made transition in his 50s from a disease that could have been treated if he had been allowed treatment. South African government killed Robert Sobukwe. I have no doubt in my mind they shortened his life for sure. And we're going to talk about some of the other things they put him through on the way to, for a lot of people, and I would agree with them, think to be a premature physical death in Kimberley, a place he never lived, Kimberley, South Africa, which is where they did the diamond mining. The same year Howard University was founded, 1867, they found diamonds in Kimberley. So you talk about the criminals that preceded Cecil Rhodes, people like Kruger, Paul Kruger, the Kruger Rand, those people, the diamond people. But yes, the whole process of thinking that we will win begins with what you just said about the Johnsons, with what Sobukwe understood about the people. We will win because we have the people and because we are right. And that's the other thing Baba Hannibal would say. We will win because we are right. And in fact, there was a saying that they used to say in the Pan Africanist Congress, and this is a saying they developed back in the early 1950s, and they would say, Africa for Africans, Africans for humanity, and humanity for God. Africa for Africans, Africans for humanity, and humanity for God. Because ultimately this struggle isn't about race, because unlike his white captors, or white oppressors rather, Robert Sobukwe was not a racialist. He did not discriminate based on the color of anyone's skin. In fact, in the film, there's a poignant moment when one of the jailers on Robben Island reflected on the fact that he was treated with great dignity by Robert Sobukwe, even as Sobukwe was banned even from talking to anybody. And they were banned from talking to him for 6 years on Robben Island. I'm going to tell you the story in a minute when we get to it. But Sobukwe treated white people who treated him with respect. White people who treated him disrespectfully, he did not reciprocate in the same way. And people say, well, why didn't he? And some of his comrades like, why you talk to these Boers like this? Why you let them white people talk? He say, not about that. Standing in the dock as he was sentenced. And one of the books I didn't put in storage, I mean, some things I keep around because they remind me of places I've been. There's a book called The Sun Will Rise, Statements from the Dock by Southern African Political Prisoners. This is, I bought this in Cape Town. I bought this at Clark's Bookshop, one of my favorite places in Cape Town, South Africa. Yeah, one of the reasons why I got to work probably to the end is because I take my money and buy books. But anyway, these are statements by South Africans in South Africa who resisted apartheid, not when it was convenient to do so, but at the height of its brutality, and then were sentenced, some to death, some to life imprisonment, some to God knows whatever. And look at this table of contents. Look who's the first name. Robert Sobukwe, before Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu. It was Robert Sobukwe, #1 on the back cover. You see? And include what I paid for it, 30 Rand. Robert Sobukwe. I think at the time the Rand was to the dollar about 5 Rand. So that's $6. I paid $6 for this, although I don't know if you can find it now. This, of course, was printed by an organization. I have a lot of their work, the International Defense and Aid Fund, which was in London. This was printed by people in exile. Remember, they snuck Thabo Mbeki. They snuck him out. His father was locked up on Robben Island. They went and got, of all people, Kenneth Kaunda. Kenneth Kaunda was able to sneak Thabo Mbeki out, which is why he speaks with a bit of a British accent, in part because he was raised in England, among other places. But the anti-apartheid movement was global at this time. This was first published. This is the second edition. This was first published in 1974. This is the revised edition from 1981. Shout out to my people at Clark's Bookstore. I haven't been there in about 10 years. I love going, those places because they have a lot of these little pamphlets. And I go in the bookstore and, I'm going to check the places you normally check. Then I'm going to look at every shelf in the place, especially if they have an ephemera shelf, them little slim volumes, especially if it ain't got nothing on the cut. You got to pull out every one of them to see. How did you find that? I looked over there. You didn't look. Anyway, this is Sobukwe. This is Robert Sobukwe, the great Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe. Son of a Methodist preacher, Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe was born at Graaff-Reinet, where even the dogs bark in Afrikaans, in the Cape in 1924. Educated at Haroldtown Mission School and Fort Hare College. My book on Fort Hare, I got 2 books on Fort Hare. One is almost impossible to find. The other, they're in storage. I could see them. Can't tear up the house looking for them if they're in storage. Anyway, Fort Hare is like I make this comparison. It's not a great one, but it's close enough to get. It's like the HBCU of South Africa. The University of Western Cape, where the Mayibuye archives are. I take students to the Mayibuye archives every time we went to South Africa. That's the apartheid archives, or the resistance archives at the University of the Western Cape. They talk about whites, coloreds, and Africans, which Sobukwe wouldn't do. He say everybody African. They say even white people. Yeah, because we all came from Africa, and it's going to be controlled by Africans. And we'll talk about that in a minute when they split with the African National Congress, which he was in and a faithful and loyal member of. And then they got into this argument over the Freedom Charter in the 1950s. But I'll come to that. He says, son of a Methodist preacher, Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe was born at Graaff-Reinet in the Cape in 1924. Educated at Haroldtown Mission School and Fort Hare College. He was a militant youth leader. In 1952, he took part in the Defiance Campaign, that's the African National Congress, and was dismissed from his job as a teacher. He played a leading role in the founding of the Pan Africanist Congress, the breakaway movement from the African National Congress, and in 1959 was elected its president. He resigned from a lectureship in African languages. The man was a linguist in African languages at the University of the Witwatersrand. That's what they call Wits University, W-I-T-S. To lead the anti-pass laws protest in 1960. Oh, that's the one right there. Let me keep reading. Sharpeville Massacre, March 1960. We'll get there. Sharpeville was but one of the areas where the demonstrators gathered for the culmination of the protests on March 21st. One of the first places I went in South Africa was Sharpeville, where they did the Sharpeville Massacre, where the police killed Black people, injured Black people by the hundreds, because they say we're not carrying this funky ass Dom pass around anymore. It was a pass. Can you imagine You imagine living in a society where white people could stop you at any time and ask you for your papers, and you had to come out of your pocket with the dumb pass, the pass showing where you had been, where every place you had been, stamped by the police. At any moment, they could ask you, and you had to have your dumb pass on you. Richard Pryor, Gil Scott Heron, Saturday Night Live. That wouldn't happen today. Maybe it would, but then again, where would you find a Gil Scott Heron or Richard Pryor? Not to put that burden on contemporary artists. After all, you know, the great Kendrick Lamar has just released a new album, and he'll be dancing before the eye of the white masters and everybody else crazy enough to watch it at the Super Bowl next month. But at any rate, you know, I'm not sure if you could find a Gil Scott Heron today, but you can certainly find his music sampled and pay tribute to in the works of these later artists. But, you know, it's one thing about walking spirit, a talking spirit. Can you walk spirit? I hear you, Brother George. But at any rate, Richard Pryor, Gil Scott Heron, Saturday Night Live. One of the live performances that Richard Pryor introduced Gil Scott Heron to sing that night was, "Somebody tell me what's the word. Tell me, brother, have you heard from Johannesburg?" Gil Scott Heron, what's the word? Johannesburg. Let me hear from the back. Johannesburg. And then at the end of the song, that famous chant that Gil starts as he has gone through that song. Let me see your ID. 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 The dumb pass. 1960. Sobukwe and his comrades in the Pan Africanist Congress said, F the dumb pass. Walked into the police station in Sharpeville and around the country, walked into the Sobukwe walks in and says, "Sir," to the white cop, civility, "Sir, arrest us, please." "What? What are you doing here?" "Arrest me." "Why? That pass that I'm supposed to carry 24 hours a day, I don't have it. And I ain't never carrying it again. Arrest me, sir." The cop looking at him like, and the brothers in there with him. Now, mind you, these Negroes always wearing shirts and ties and suit jackets. You can't tell who African is by how he or she dresses. You understand? Now, if you catch me in a tie any of the rest of the days of my life, it's probably a body double. So kill it and find out where they've taken me hostage. But I don't mean I'm trashing anybody who does wear a tie. People look good in suits and ties. I ain't got no problem with that. Robert Sobukwe. And then they have this thing in South Africa where they will wear the shirt, the tie, and the jacket. But before they put the jacket on, they put a pullover sweater on. So you see Sobukwe always with the tie and the shirt, and then the sweater over it top. You know, it's very professorial. And he carried a pipe. Now, of course, his pipe probably led to the cancer that killed him, but then he didn't get no treatment. But the whole point is that they always had a certain dignity in the way they moved through the world. Do you imagine these brothers suit tie, got their sweaters on over, and their jackets, arrest us. Sobukwe said, "Arrest me." They wouldn't arrest him, told him go outside. They went outside. The police engaged in mass slaughter from the rooftops. Sobukwe escaped with his life. But let me finish reading. Again, he resigned from a lectureship in African languages at the University of Witwatersrand to lead the anti-pass laws protests in 1960. Sharpeville was but one of the areas where the demonstrators gathered for the culmination of the protests in March 21. Sobukwe was arrested in Orlando, it's Orlando East, with 22 others and charged with inciting a campaign against the pass laws and or inciting the destruction of reference books. And they ain't lock up no cops for killing. They locked them up for protesting. Shout out to the mayor of Memphis, a hostage. A Negro hostage. I shouldn't say that. I don't know if he's hostage or not. He may be under his own desire, but who said that the city of Memphis is not going to automatically cooperate with Kristen Clark and the Justice Department. I won't talk about her affirmative action appointee boss, Merrick Garland, but Kristen Clark again announcing this week the findings of the investigation of the Memphis Police Department, adding that to the list of places that Kristen Clark has led the investigation of. And with the end of consent decrees upon us, both parties are the same. Okay, we're going to find out how both parties are the same in January. There won't be no more consent decrees, friends. If you talk to people like Ilya Mistal or any of us, really, quite frankly, you might speculate that there may never again be consent decrees. But at any rate, and some people say consent decrees don't work. My response to them is name me one city where they've been fully implemented, because we saw the mayor of Chicago this week, Brandon Johnson, say he's going to reinstate like close to $200 million, like $193 million to the police budget, in part because the, what's the brother Kwame's last name? Kim Delaney knows, that's her friend, who's the Attorney General of Illinois, who said that Chicago is not in compliance with the consent decree, the federal consent decree that they have on them. But in part, that's because once you turn that money loose to the police, they do whatever the hell they want to do it. And that $193 million that Mayor Johnson has restored to the budget, ostensibly to help with the consent decree, that's just about the exact number. It's like 193.4 or 193, I think it's 193.4 million. It's almost the exact number that would add up to the amount of raises that they have to give the Chicago police according to their negotiated contract with the funky ass Fraternal Order of Police. And yeah, I said funky ass. There are a lot of things I would say worse than that, but it wouldn't really matter, because I think the worst thing you can say about the Fraternal Order of Police is the name Fraternal Order of Police. So there's no need to put any more adjectives in front of it, I guess. But in other words, they ain't gonna take that money and put it to consent decree. They're gonna take that money and put it in their pocket. And they fired the guy who was in charge of monitoring whether they're doing a consent decree. The police chief fired him because he complained that you were taking money that was supposed to go to consent decree implementation and transferred it to the salaries of patrol cops that you took out of that and put into the patrol, put them out in the street. You're not using the money. So when people say consent decrees don't work, I have a simple question. Name me one place where they've been implemented. But you ain't got to worry about that as of January. But the point is that these people, Sobukwe and them, this ain't 2024 when they come out in the street protesting peacefully. But like 2024, whether it be Chicago or Memphis, now you got Negroes elected to office to say they ain't gonna help. I don't know what's going through the mind of the brother who's the mayor of Memphis, but you know, whatever it is, brother, we need to get you on a better page than you are. Just like 1960, the police never, you can charge a couple of them and put a few in jail and then celebrate, pat yourself on the back till your arm break. But at the end of the day, the thing doesn't really change in the streets for the people. And in 1960 or 2024, in the United States, in 2024, in South Africa in 1960, the police don't get charged. You charge the people who are protesting the brutality. And in 1960, 1960, Sobukwe was charged in Orlando with 22 others. Orlando is a suburb there. Charged with inciting a campaign against the past laws and or inciting the destruction of reference books. In conducting the defense of the Johannesburg Regional Court, Sobukwe explained that he and the other accused had refused to enter a plea because the law under which they were charged was made exclusively by and for white men. They made this point that Dr. King would make half a world away. Unjust laws cannot be obeyed. In fact, what Sobukwe and them said was, there is no moral way to enforce an immoral law. There's no just way to enforce an unjust law. They did not see how justice could be done. In his statement, Sobukwe said, quote, the chief aims of the Pan Africanist Congress are the complete overthrow of white domination and the establishment of a non-racial democracy in South Africa, as well as throughout the whole of Africa. He's a Pan Africanist. Sobukwe goes on to say, we regard it as our historic role to contribute towards a United States of Africa from Cape to Cairo, not like you mean, you funky ass Cecil Rhodes, from Cape to Cairo, Morocco to Madagascar. Sobukwe says, for the same reason we stand for government of the African, by the African, and for the African, with everybody owing his allegiance to Africa and prepared to accept the rule of the African majority. White people, you say we can't vote? No, fool. You can vote. We want you to vote. We want everybody to vote. We want everybody to vote. Funny how stressing one word in the same words in a sentence can make a difference. We want everybody to vote. We want everybody to vote. You too. We wouldn't be facing what we're about to face in January if everybody had voted. I think we're all convinced of that. You understand? He says, with everybody owing his allegiance to Africa and prepared also to accept the rule of the African majority. Sobukwe goes on to say, the object of the Pan Africanist Congress is to draw up a program of action which will be faithfully pursued instead of meekly reacting to the flow of white legislation from Parliament. I think this is in some ways a rhetorical preview of what we don't see in January. If you think it's going to be easy, DJT, even if you get your heroically qualified appointments, the wrestler at education, the amateur billionaire astronaut at NASA, the black man, Wesley Hunt, at Defense, the Attorney General, Matt Gaetz, who's now out, now Pam Biondi, wait a minute, hold on, let me go back one. The black, no, that's not, I'm sorry, Wesley Hunt. I'm sorry. No, you're not getting that job. Stand over there with them starting five. Ain't that little show y'all had on TV for a minute? You, Tim Scott, Byron Donalds, I forget the other Negroes. It seemed like y'all on the bench. In fact, y'all ain't even on the bench. Seemed like y'all, are y'all in the audience? Y'all outside talking about tickets, who needs tickets? I don't even think y'all got in the damn arena to get on the bench to maybe get put in the game. Anyway, not Wesley Hunt. I mean, Hegsteth, Secretary of Defense. Even if you get those, and you saw Steve Bannon this week in his row house in the shadow of Capitol Hill, mad at Mar-a-Lago, saying you gotta support Pete. You gotta support Pete. When I say they are eminently qualified, they are qualified for what Bannon wants, which is utter chaos. Destroy the thing from inside. Now the call is coming from inside the house. That is what they're after. Sobukwe said, the object of the PAC is to draw upon a program of action which will be faithfully pursued instead of meekly reacting to the flow of white legislation from Parliament. In other words, when they get in January in the United States and they start doing whatever they're going to do you think it's going to be easy? As Tina Turner might say, some things we like things nice and rough. You going to start snatching children out of schools in the Bronx and Brooklyn? You going to start snatching schools out of LA Unified or in Houston and Dallas? You think people's going to say, okay, well, bye? Claudia Sheinbaum already giving you the middle finger, Chief. The president of Mexico, Dr. Sheinbaum, say, you're not sending people here. But of course, that's not the point. We saw Jasmine, Jasmine Crockett, Congresswoman Crockett this week, interrogating one of the people responsible for the census, U.S. Census, and saying that she has done a lot of work on something called prison gerrymandering. If you don't know what that is, look it up. Prison gerrymandering is when they put people in prisons in hillbilly havens like rural Texas or Pennsylvania and then use their bodies to count toward resource and political representation, resource distribution and political representation in those areas. So if you want to know why the population of Texas has swelled by 4 million, 95% of it non-white, and in the 2 congressional districts that were drawn by the hillbilly legislature in Texas, they are able to get 2 more white nationalist Congress people out of new populations that is 95% non-white. You understand something called, among other things, called prison gerrymandering. These are these laws that ultimately are going to bust out the United States from the inside. I know people don't necessarily like me to hear, like when I say that the United States of America is going to collapse, but I'm just saying that not as a matter of opinion, although it is my opinion as well, but it's an informed opinion. See, I study history, and this is how it happens. And this settler colony has less of a chance to survive than the Romans did. But I guess we're all going to see, aren't we? Anyway, he says the Pan Africanist Congress, Sobukwe does, decided to bring about the immediate abolition of the past laws because it was the immediate need of the African people. It was their demand. On May 4th, 1960, in mitigation of sentence, he said, it will be remembered that we refused to plead the charges against us. We felt we had no moral obligation to obey the laws made by a white minority without wishing to impugn the personal honor and integrity of the magistrate. An unjust law cannot be applied justly. We have said we believe in the human race and that alone. The history of the human race has been a struggle for the removal of mental, moral, and spiritual oppression. And we would have failed had we not made our contribution to the struggle. We are glad we made it. If we are sent to jail, there will always be others to take our place. We are not afraid to face the consequences of our actions. And it is not our intention to plead for mercy, end quote. That's just the little statement, famous statement from the doc, 1960. The last paragraph reads as follows. In this little book, The Sun Will Rise. Sentenced to 3 years imprisonment, Sobukwe was, on his release in 1963. Let me pause here to say that another great honor in my life was taking students to what they call Constitution Hill. That's where they screened Sobukwe, a great soul, the other night on the 100th anniversary of his birth. Constitution Hill is where the highest court in South Africa meets. One of my comrades and colleagues at the Howard University School of Law helped work on the South African Constitution. Professor Matala, who teaches common law at Howard, good brother, South African. And, you talk about principles. Principles aren't when it's easy. Principles are when it's tough, And when bringing and voicing opposition to the mass murderers of the Israeli Defense Force was set before faculties across this country. Mutala wasn't scared to say, this is mass murder. I don't care what's going on in college campuses, including my own. I will speak out against this. And in response to people saying, man, aren't you worried? I am South African. Oh, man, shit. I am South African. Let me tell y'all a reason why I love South Africa so much. It isn't because it doesn't have, it has fewer problems than here in the United States. The color line belts the world and the petty bourgeois Negroes who would oppose Sobukwe, which is one of the reasons why Sobukwe isn't a bigger figure in South Africa to this moment. It isn't because it's better there. But you know, sometimes when the thing is closer in time, when it's in your living memory, you lose your fear. I've seen worse than this. You got to hold on to your principles. Shout out to my man Zaid Mutala. Anyway, sentenced to 3 years imprisonment. Sobukwe was on his release in 1963, and he was kept initially, that's why I brought it up, in Constitution Hill, where the South African highest court meets on Constitution Hill. That was where the prison was. They had Sobukwe there. I'll never forget taking students and we going through and saying, this is the chamber where the highest court, the Constitutional Court of South Africa meets. And it's also the place where the prison used to be. Across the street is where the women's prison used to be. Right down there is where they had Robert Sobukwe. Come on, y'all. Let's go. This is where they had Sobukwe. All right. Y'all ready? All right, everybody, we're just going to be quiet for a minute. Let the wind blow. We stand here in these same buildings. Let me tell you what the South Africans did. The things that were done to them, they turned into national holidays and days of remembrance. So they take March 21st every year and think about what happened. They take the day of the Soweto massacre in June 1976. That's National Youth Day. They take those days, they put it in their memory. Here in the United States, we have Juneteenth, which was always in our governance formation. They sign a bill and people want to argue, you can't, and everybody calm down. One of the reasons you have these moments, these ritual moments, is to remember. Now, the question is, how are you going to fight over the memory? So they have him on Constitution Hill. Then it says they release him 3 years. Sobukwe was on his release in 1963, promptly detained on Robben Island by an act of parliament for a further 6 years. This, friends, is what you probably have heard of. Some of you, many of you know it, and sometimes you may know it better than I do, but many of you may have heard what I'm about to say. They call it the Robert Sobukwe Law. They detained Robert Sobukwe on Robben Island. Yes, the famous Robben Island. I'll never forget the first time we went to Robben Island. That's that island off the coast of Cape Town. Sitting there off the coast. You can see it, but you can't get to it. There were people who escaped from Robben Island who got out of the jail cell, got to the edge of the island, got in the water, and actually made it back to Robben. I made it back to the mainland, which is treacherous. When you get on a boat and go to Robben Island, you on a boat that's so choppy, it's coming up and down. That's where they put the sister who was the leader of the Xhosas who engaged in what they call the cattle killing. Robben Island, they've been imprisoning Africans on Robben Island since them funky ass criminals got there in the 17th century. But that's also where they put the most dangerous threats to their apartheid government. That's where Mandela was in prison. Some of y'all have been there. Baba J has taken people there many times. Has been stood there many times. The cell of Nelson Mandela and Ahmed Kathrada, the cell of Walter Sisulu. They got Oliver Tambo out the country, but they didn't get their comrade out of the country. They didn't get Mbeki out. Govan Mbeki. They got his son out, but Govan. This is where they took you to the. They would take them to the limestone quarry where they had to break limestone, and that dust would get in the eyes of people like Mandela, which is why he had that cataract surgery later in life, or you go blind. The dust from them rocks, busting rocks every day, and they would bust up. They would get in them caves and do political education work there. That was Robben Island, where they had them in prison, and also Robert Sobukwe, except the prison where they had Mandela and Sisulu and all them. And as Ahmed Kathrada says in Sobukwe, A Great Soul, I got a chance to meet Baba Kathy, Ahmed Kathrada. He came to DC one time. I was just sitting there, and I don't think enough people in the room knew who he was. He just an old man sitting there. He kind of reminded me of my uncle. He's Indian, like people from the Indian subcontinent, but he's South African. So he's sitting there. Ahmed Kathrada. I sat there and talked to him for a while. He's an ancestor now. And then the program started. Oh, that was, yeah. See, you can't prepare on the day. My point from earlier, but the point is this is where they had them all, because Kathrada said we had each other. They had Sobukwe, and then they had Mandela. They had Mandela, and then they had Sobukwe. They had Sobukwe, and then they had Mandela. They had Mandela, 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 and then they had Mandela We talked, we ate together, we organized, we discussed, we did political education, we read, man. So here's where they had. Around the island, on the other side, they had a little cottage, a little yellow cottage. That's where they put Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe. Sobukwe was in a cottage, little writing table, kitchen, little garden, things like that. Could not speak to other human beings, even the guards that would check on him, who couldn't speak to him. You do what you want, no chains, no, you got your pipe, got your suit jacket with that sweater, and we even come over here and talk to you. National officials would come in, famous pictures of Sobukwe standing in the middle of 7 white men, 3 on one side, 4 on the other, and he's smiling, laughing, and they all smiling, laughing. But that's an exception. Most of the time, you by yourself. Solitary confinement by yourself. And nobody can talk to you. Them prisoners, Mandela, they can't talk to you. And every year we come to you. Every year they come to you and say, have you changed your mind? Do you renounce your beliefs? Do you renounce what you do? And Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe would say to them, I'm the same man I was when you put me here. And they put another year on this thing 6 times. First time I went to South Africa. And y'all help me, Jack, or anybody else who's been there in the last maybe 10 years. Help me if it has changed. Because last time I was there, they have a fence around it now. And you can't get off the bus. Because you got to get on a bus and go around there. And then the bus now, last time I was there, it just kind of idles for a minute. They tell you about it, and then they keep moving. The first time I was there was 2004. Remember this, Stephanie? If you're here today, Dr. Stephanie Joy Tisdale out of Philly. She was an undergrad at Howard. Kadiri Barole, my man Nate. I'm trying to think of who else was on that trip. Anyway, we're on the bus, so it's tourists. What they did after the end of apartheid was anybody who was imprisoned on that island, who wanted to take the responsibility that I'm about to describe next, they offered them this chance, and they said if they wanted to take it, they took it. They became the tour guides. They ran the island. Ooh, can you imagine? They locked you up at the federal penitentiary. Then the whole country changes because of the struggle that you were in jail for. And they give you the responsibility of telling the story to people who want to come. Some people was like, I ain't never coming this shit. But enough people said, no, I'll do it. We had a sister. Sister was our guide. We're on the bus. She's telling us about everything. Then we get on the bus. She's walking. She's telling us stuff. Then we come around the bus. The bus is coming around. We stop in front of the cottage. There is no fence. This is 2004. It's 20 years ago. At the time, we're not talking about the cell phone cameras. Many of us had little box cameras and cardboard cameras. So the bus has probably got about maybe 30 people on it. There may be about 10 of us. And no, not even 10. Yeah, let's say 10. Maybe it's 8 or 9. And the rest of the bus is white people. Swedes, Germans, whoever. They And tourism is a big thing in South Africa. Right? So they turned the bus off. Those students had been in class with me. They knew exactly what that cottage was. And they knew exactly who stayed there. These are my students. I take their responsibility very seriously. So when they stopped the bus, I was like, there it is, y'all. And they all moved to the side of the bus where they can start taking pictures. The white people sitting there looking at us like, so then they get up and start taking pictures. They don't even know they're taking pictures. Most of them, I'm sure they didn't know, but they saw us. So the sisters in front, how the tour guide will stand up in the front of the bus, they talking shit on the microphone. So while I took pictures, the students taking pictures, and I said, can we get out? She said, yeah. And I said, that's the place, right? This sister, I'll never forget. She said, that's mine. That's what she said to me. That man should have been the president of South Africa. I said, you mind saying it again? She got on the microphone. This is the place they had Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe imprisoned. This is the greatest of our warriors who fought against apartheid. He should have been the president of South Africa. Now, the white people are like, oh, shit, we got to get off. They got a fence around the house. I don't know if they can do that again. I'm sure they had special tours, whatever. But, I mean, my God. Sobukwe, can you imagine that? And then They showed this scene in the film yesterday, reenacted it, but the way she told the story, I'm about to tell y'all, she said, when the prisoners would be marched to their duties, and from the distance, they could see, when they marched them around the island, and they see Sobukwe standing by the shore. They can't talk to Sobukwe. They're not close enough. They can say, hey, prof. They can't do that. Sobukwe was known for raising his hand and speaking to everybody. Even when he's in Kimberley, the latest book on Sobukwe is about his time in Kimberley. Robert Sobukwe, when they finally let him out, Robert Sobukwe, they exile him to another part of the country he never been in, him, his wife, his children. Sobukwe then studies for the bar. He's in his 40s. He passes the bar, becomes a lawyer, starts practicing law. Then they tell him you can't have but one person at a time to talk to you. He breaks that law immediately. Finally, himself, just leave him alone. Why? Because I suspect they knew they had that the untreated cancer was going to kill him. Hey, just let him go. Sobukwe, his hand was like perpetually like this. He's waving. He's talking to everybody, children, people, white, black, don't matter. Everybody. It's to the point where his friends told him, prof, when you're riding in the car, can we just make you a cardboard hand like this, and you could just stick it out the window? Because they were joking, but not joking. I mean, he never stopped. His generosity of spirit, by all accounts. Oh my God. But at any rate, the point is this. Sobukwe, when he would see them and they would see him from a distance, these guards, but Sobukwe would stoop, pick up the dirt off the beach, hold it up, and let it filter through his fingers. The prisoners, seeing Sobukwe as they're being marched, would stoop, pick up the dirt, their fingers. Why? Robert Sobukwe's whole life, his message was simple. 4 words. The land is ours. This is why they split with the African National Congress. I'm going to come to that and kind of wind to a close for today. Sentenced to 3 years imprisonment, Sobukwe was on his release in 1963, promptly detained on Robben Island by an act of parliament for a further 6 years. From 1969, this is when they let him out after 6 years on Robben Island, year after year. You change? Hell no. Another year. You change? Hell no. Another year. You change? Hell no. Another year. Change? Hell no. Another year. You change? Hell no. Another year. You change? Hell no. Another year. You change? Hell no. Let him go. Okay. From 1969, he was restricted by bans and confined to the Kimberley district. When he applied for an exit permit to go into exile in 1971, then perhaps he got some doctors from Howard or Meharry or Charles Drew, some doctors maybe from Morehouse School of Medicine, some doctors who said, we're going to help. Oh man, this cancer, it's not quite spread. Okay. In 1971, when he applied for an exit permit to go into exile, he was refused the necessary permissions, of course, because they knew. In Kimberley, he qualified as an attorney, and many who visited him there spoke of his unfailing courage and magnanimity. By 1977, he was seriously ill with cancer of the lungs, and on 27 February 1978, he died in Kimberley hospitals. Robert Sobukwe, there have been a few books on him. Unfortunately, the couple that I'm thinking about, Benjamin Progran's book and the edited book, the most recent book that he edited, I think they're in storage. I'm bitter about that because I usually keep my Sobukwe stuff in the same place, and I think in moving and packing stuff and moving stuff, I may have put it in one of the couple of boxes I kept here, but I didn't want to belabor it last night because I got home late because we were at Sankofa pretty late for a reason. As I end, I'm going to talk about for a moment. This is one of the more recent books. There have been 2 recent books published in South Africa in collaboration with some U.S. presses, Wits, University of Witwatersrand, where they gave Robert Sobukwe an honorary PhD. It's called Lie on Your Wounds: The Prison Correspondence of Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe. But this is correspondence that Sobukwe wrote that covers the time he was in exile. He was in prison, and only goes up to that. And the famous address he gave, which I'm going to end with in a moment, October the 21st, 1949 at Fort Hare College when he was 25 years old. My God, no, 24, hadn't turned 25, birthday in December. This is October. I'm connected to something else that happened at Sankofa last night. An important book because they told Sobukwe he couldn't write about politics or they would destroy the letters. They never get it out. So this book is 560, including the index, 565 pages. Correspondence, letters. He's writing to his wife, he's writing to his people, but he's not able to write about politics. So what you're writing about is your humanity. Writing about is who you are. Writing about your beliefs. It's a powerful testament. There's a second volume that covers his writings from when he was in Kimberley. Remember now, this guy's under perpetual surveillance. The only person in the history of the country with the parliament met and passed a law for one person, the Robert Sobukwe law. Why? Because he gave him 3-year sentence for Sharpeville. Okay, he's done. Okay, let's pass a law that says we can keep his ass in jail forever. What did he do? We just passing a law. What? Who does that? Well, after January 2025, we may hear some more about laws like that, since the Supreme Court then told Trump he can do whatever the hell he wants. But let's hold off on that this time. Obviously, we're all going to see that car crash up front. Both parties are ashamed. Okay, we're going to find out. But in Sobukwe's case, it wasn't no. Your offense is being. Your offense is being Robert Sobukwe, sir. Now, mind you, because I said I'm going to wrap up, so we can talk about this another time. Maybe we talk a bit some more on Monday night. One of the reasons, and I'll comment here. One of the reasons that the Pan Africanist Congress of Azania was founded was because the African National Congress, which Sobukwe was a member of, this is Mandela and them. This is the one founded in, I think, 1912, the South African Native National Congress, John Dube and all them boys. A.P. Mda. This is Zakes Mda, famous South African writer. This is his book, Sometimes There's a Void, Memoirs of an Outsider. I had this around. This didn't go in storage. His father was one of the founders of the Pan Africanist Congress. They broke with the ANC, not because they wanted to leave the ANC, because the ANC put them out, because they didn't like the Pan Africanists, what they call themselves the Africanists. They, as we heard, are not against white people. They're against white supremacy. So was the ANC. But the ANC drafted something called a Freedom Charter, 1955. And this Freedom Charter, they said South Africa belongs to all who live in it. And Sobukwe said, "Oh, Chief, hold on. Oh, no, what is you doing, baby? South Africa belongs to the Africans. Africa for the Africans, Africans for humanity, humanity for God. White people, yeah, were you born at South Africa? Don't, but what is this? What is this?" He said, and then so what they said, this them communists. Now Zakes Mda says this about his father in Sometimes There's a Void. He said, "I don't understand. My father was, in fact," he says, let me see if I can find it. He says, this is what Zakes Mda, the famous, look him up, Zakes Mda, the famous South Africa. This is what Tata Mda says. Tata Zakes, Baba Zakes, as it may say. "We all knew about Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe, Pan-Africanist leaders like John Yanti Pokela, who was from Hohobergberg, a village near R. Koboshani, spoke about him all the time when he visited. He was president of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, known as the PAC for short, a party that broke away from the African National Congress in 1959. My father was regarded as the founding spirit of the PAC." This is his father, AP Mda. Zakes Mda's father, that is. "Though initially he was not in favor of the breakaway. He believed that the Africanist group should change the ideological direction of the ANC from within. So did Sobukwe and them. They didn't want to leave the ANC. They got put out. But in the end, the young militants who opposed the ANC Freedom Charter, particularly clauses in it that declared that the land in South Africa belonged to all of those who live in it, won the day and walked out of the mother organization. At the roundtable family meetings that my father called to analyze the state of the struggle, he emphasized that the PAC had his full support. He outlined to us the philosophy of African nationalism, which he formulated in his famous debates with his friend and roommate, Anton Lembede, in which he then developed further when he was the president of the ANC Youth League in 1948. He had initiated Lembede into the politics of the ANC when the latter first came to Johannesburg from Natal. We could go on, but I want to kind of begin, like I said, wrap this up. Let me explain what I'm talking about here by way of a little brochure that, I bought this. It's a pamphlet that I bought when in 2007, we took students to South Africa, and in Johannesburg, we went to a place called the Apartheid Museum. They may still sell this here. This was actually produced by the Steve Biko Foundation. The good brother Nkosimante Biko, the son of Steve Biko, met him actually later that year in South Africa because I'd had the students while we were there that summer practice writing abstracts for submitting things to conferences and things like that. And because I wouldn't ask students to do anything that I wouldn't do myself, again, Robert Sobukwe in Sharpeville, wow. Sobukwe was like, this is a problem with you fat cat Negro leaders. Some of y'all lawyers, some of y'all doctors, I mean, y'all order the people around, and then the people looking like, where are you? And say, well, we can't do that because there may be some danger and you need your leaders. So therefore, Sobukwe said, I would never do anything. I would never tell people to do anything I wouldn't do myself. That's why Sobukwe was at Sharpeville. That's why Sobukwe was in that police station. That's why Sobukwe was outside that police station. They opened up mass murder. He could have been killed that day. So I'm not going to tell people to do anything I wouldn't do myself. I feel the same way about that. Well, in this exhibit, they had an exhibit on apartheid, and they had, this is the booklet, Biko, The Quest for a True Humanity. Like I said, that summer, had students write these abstracts. And so I went down to get the papers like I did every morning after, paying my respects to Cecil Rhodes, and went down. I'm reading the papers, and in the morning papers, they had an announcement for a Steve Biko conference because it was the 30-year anniversary of when he was killed, 1977 to 2007. And it was a call for papers. So I took the call for papers back to class later that morning. I said, let's all write abstracts to practice. I sent my abstract into them for kicks. They sent a message back. We back in DC. Like, oh, well, I was living in Philly at the time. They sent it back to the state saying, hey, congratulations, your abstract has been accepted. We want you to come. Huh? What? And we paying for everything. Oh, well, shit, I'll be on the plane. So I came. That's when I met Thabo Mbeki. That's when I met Kenneth Kaunda and heard that story about how they got Mbeki out of the country. That's when I met J.J. Rollins and his wife, the president of Ghana. I was on a panel with KK Kaunda and Rollins talking about this question of African governance. It got heated, it got complicated, but it was very important to have that conversation. What I'm saying is, it was an opportunity to see up close some of the things that have emerged. Sobukwe was somebody I wanted to talk about a great deal. And I heard stories about Robert Sobukwe from his comrades at the Steve Biko conference. The Steve Biko Foundation is Johannesburg, and they published this. And I got this at the Apartheid Museum. It's important because in its table of contents, it shows you some of the genealogy. It starts with Steve Biko, but it has something on page 6 called the African Intellectual Tradition, and the Pan Africanist Congress comes out of a genealogy. Here are some of the founders of that tradition. These are Africans who they tried to educate to be Europeans, but they took that education and used it as a weapon against Saul Plaji, for example, one of the people, Tio Soga from the 19th century. And then you start talking about this. Here's where Sobukwe them come in. From Pan-Africanism to Black consciousness. There's Kwame Nkrumah, who Sobukwe was a comrade of. There's Patrice Lumumba. By the way, everyone, remember a couple of weeks ago, we talked about a month ago, the New York Times did a review of a film called Soundtrack for a Coup d'etat. And a couple of Nubians came in because they saw it at the Film Forum in New York. Well, that film is in the DC area this weekend. It's playing on Sunday at AFI Cinema. So y'all should check that out if you can. Marcus Garvey's in here. Du Bois is in here. But most importantly, I want to talk just for a moment about some of the direct intellectual genealogy. It's got the Black Power movement, Biko's early life. Let me see if I can find it quickly. If I can't, I'm not going to belabor the point because I know there's a picture of Anton Mbeki in here, and I wanted to. No, I'm not going to be able to find it quickly. So, oh wait, yes, duh. So, sowing the seeds of self-reliance. John Dubé, one of the founders of the African National Congress. You see, but on this page, this is the page you want to go to. The move to Africanism. Now you got these young people like Herbert Lomo. You got. This is Mbeki, Anton Mbeki. There's no picture of A.P. Mda, Zakes Mda's father, but look at the bottom there. There's Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe. Sobukwe, Robert Sobukwe, a man of great intellect and charisma, a fervent Africanist. Sobukwe saw the struggle against white oppression as an African struggle. It was in this context that he broke away from the ANC in 1959 to form the Pan Africanist Congress. He says, we are not, this is a direct quote from Sobukwe. We are not anti-white. We do not hate the European because he is white. We hate him because he is an oppressor. And it is plain dishonesty to say I hate the sjambok and not the one who wields it. In other words, it's plain hypocrisy to say I hate the stick, I hate the gun, and not the one that wields it. So it's very important to understand that. Now, Sobukwe, how is he remembered? This is important. This is Cordelia Manguku's book, Biko, a biography. As I told you all before, and I won't go over that story in detail again, I'll just mention it in passing. I bought this in exclusive books in South Africa. I was in Joburg for the 100th anniversary of the ANC. This was from, I guess, 2014. And everybody had retired to the hotel. And where you going? I said, I'm going in the street. 5 Rand will get me to the mall. I got to go to the bookstore. Oh, come on. You always go to the bookstore. Everybody calm down. You do you, I do me. I'm here for a job. The job is to get the books that I can't get in the United States. And 5 Rand, that little 5 Rand, come on with the loonies. I got 5 on it. That was our running joke in South Africa. 5 Rand for them. I got 5 on it. And they stuff you in that little van, and you press your 5 Rand. They put it in a little Crown Royal bag in the front. I'm at the mall. And so I'm looking for this book. I read in the paper the book was out. I'm looking. I ended up with 2 copies, one for myself and one for one of my students that I've had since she was a teenager in Philadelphia Freedom School, who's now my colleague on the faculty at Howard, Shanice Thompson. I got Shanice a book. I got myself a book. And I'm at the store. I got all these books. I'm looking for this book. I don't see this book. I get to the counter. I said, I'm looking for the Biko book. The girl thumbs her behind her. I look, and it's a wall of the Biko books. What in the world? Why y'all got them here? She said, because, sir, the students who don't have money, they come, they take this book. I said, what? So you got teenagers, they're not taking the trash fiction that they got in Barnes and Nobles at the front, because the students used to read. Now they don't read anything of it. But no, they taking the political book. Tears welled up as I paid for those books. They had to keep this book behind the counter. That's how much the young people wanted this Biko book. If they ain't had the money, they take it. My God, at that time, that's why I wish I was rich. Everybody get the book. Biko met Sobukwe, snuck and met Sobukwe after Sobukwe had been put in exile in Kimberley, and Biko surreptitiously gets to Kimberley, and they meet. So in the film, they talk about the Soweto insurrection of 1976, where the young people was like, to hell with Afrikaans. We ain't speaking no Afrikaans. And they kill Hector Peterson and the rest of those kids in Soweto, and the escalation of the movement takes off. Sobukwe had a finger in that too. But how is he remembered? To kind of wind this up. I keep saying wind this up, but I promise you I ain't trying to be like no Baptist preacher. I am trying to wind it up. The first time I went to South Africa, I spent a lot of money on books, and I would get any and everything. I think I couldn't get anywhere else. I got a little pamphlet on Steve Biko that was put in my hand by a white man who owned a little coffee shop in downtown Cape Town that I would go to at night to sit and listen and talk with the people who were there. And he said, I want you to have this. And I have it in the other room, a little pamphlet on Steve Biko. I don't even think it was ever mass produced. I bought a book called The Reader's Digest History of South Africa, The Untold Story, which it ain't Reader's Digest like we think here. It was like a subaltern, like a B-side, like a dub history of South Africa. They've done several editions since. Last time I was there, I picked this up. This is Herman Guillemey and Bernard Mbenga's book, New History of South Africa. I wanted to see how they treated Sobukwe. There's a nice little page on Sobukwe here, but the thing, as you can imagine, does not center Sobukwe, because to this day, Sobukwe is not mentioned there. There were others who were freedom fighters who were very important. This isn't a criticism of them, what I'm about to say, but last night, before the film, there was another panel, and I was honored to be in conversation with this young sister who is in her mid-20s. This is in Nkosia X. This is her book, Play the Game, Hierarchical Assimilation. This book is 632 pages. This child wrote a 632-page book. She's in her 20s. She was a student at the Howard University Middle School, one of the great teachers who's ever been at that school. Tishango Mbilishaka was teaching African-centered curricula at the Howard University Middle School and lost his job. Just because it's black don't mean it's African-centered, friends. And it was great controversy. Well, because it was one of his students who never forgot those lessons. And he told those students at the time, this may be the first and last time y'all get this kind of information. You just have something called Kazi packets. You know, Kazi is the blackest of all. That Kiswahili word for work. And they would do these work packets, like 100 pages. And over the course of the semester, they had to annotate every page. He would check their homework. It was a very deep relationship he had with them. He would bring those students to my Education in Black America class. So this child would sit in class with me as a child. Now, she leaves there and qualifies for the United States Air Force, gets in the Air Force and is fighting is fighting because they got the hair policy, and then she's being harassed. She gets discharged from the Air Force in part because she suffered an injury, had trauma. She writes about it in the book, Play the Game. Then from there, she goes to college at George Washington University. I'm sorry, when she left the middle school, they got rid of those teachers who were teaching her. She left the middle school, but she got that education. She went to Benjamin Banneker, the black, kind of predominantly black academic high school here in DC. She said none of what we were being taught at the middle school was being taught at Benjamin Banneker. Then she went from there to School Without Walls, which is another one of the high quality public high schools here in DC. None of it there. Air Force, of course, none of it there. Then George Washington. And all along, I'm asking her these questions, and your audience is asking her questions. You can go on Sankofa's website and you can see the interview. You can see the conversation we had. And I would encourage you to. Very brilliant young sister. She comes and sits in my class sometimes at Howard Law School. In fact, a couple of Brother Cameron, who's a 3L, third-year law student, one of the law students who's kind of adopted her. He was there last night to support her. And so at some point, somebody asked her, and I think I asked her as well, you know, you're confronting this system all along. She said one of her favorite books was The Spook Who Sat by the Door. And so what does that mean? Because everybody doesn't have that kind of strength, or everybody doesn't have that predisposition. She named this Play the Game, hierarchical assimilation, in part because she said that's what we're taught. If you have some talent, or they see that you work hard, we want you to play the game. You play the game, you can get advanced, and then once you get advanced, you can help us. And she said, I couldn't play the game. I had to tell the truth. People will think that's crazy, but they thought Sobukwe was crazy to this day. This is a massive book called The Rise and Fall of Apartheid. This big art book from an exhibition. This is Okwi Inwazor, very famous artist, art historian. And you will see in this book is 540 pages or so. The first, look, you see the rise and fall of apartheid. See the page, the first page you see, boom, who do you see? Nelson Mandela. All right, let me be very clear about this. After the Sharpeville massacre, the ANC was like, we ain't burning no passes. We got a defiance campaign, but we ain't gonna do that. The PAC was like, nah, this gotta be escalated because y'all don't go out in the streets with these people. Sobukwe is like, I ain't gonna ask them to do nothing I wouldn't do myself. No, we will go to jail, but we ain't carrying these passes no more. Do you know after the Sharpeville massacre, Chief Albert Lutuli, who won the Nobel Peace Prize, Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, you know what they did? They got the memo from the ANC, burn the passes. Do you know how it is remembered, friends? Oh, my friends. Oh, my friends. I'm thinking about Minister Farrakhan just celebrated anniversary, he and his wife. Let's go to how it is remembered. 1960. No. Here we go. Hold on. The Defiance Campaign. Here we go. The Defiance Campaign. Hold on. I got to get this right. Because now they get involved. The ANC, now they got to ramp it up. Why? Because as it is attributed to Robespierre in the French Revolution, they stormed the Bastille. Robespierre sitting in the cafe drinking coffee. He sees the people run by. He jumps up and he runs. He said, where you going? He said, those are the people. I am their leader. Anyway, 1948 to 1959, the Defiance Campaign. Now they're going to start talking about defiance, right? Okay. Because they're going to defy apartheid. Because here go the white boys, Verwoerd and all of them. They done set up apartheid, the apartheid government in 1948. You got to resist them. I ain't going to say nothing about this. Very handsome lady there. Anyway, so you start seeing the Defiance Campaign and the strategy of non-cooperation. So, of course, you got the ANC. You got Mandela there with his, with his governance formation stuff on. And look, 1959, right? Here is Walter Sisulu showing his past before he burns it. Note the date, 1960, February 1960. Okay, let me go. And then he started talking about the treason trial, Rivonia treason trial, fighting the this is where they put Mandela and them on trial, 1958. It's all leading up to it, right? But then you get to 1960, and they got the Black Sash, which was the white women, Drum magazine. Now, 1960 to 1969. All right. Finally, they got a timeline at the beginning. The timeline, because this is where the thing escalates, right? 1960, March 21, the Sharpeville massacre. Police killed 69 people marching on the Sharpeville police station to protest the pass laws. The pass laws are temporarily lifted in an attempt to diffuse the situation. No, this is what happened. After it was clear that Sobukwe and them said no more passes, and the people, not the leaders, the people was like, nah, we ain't carrying these passes. South Africa, which had had these pass laws in place for a century. Let me see your ID. They was like, nope, suspend the pass laws. Why? Do you know what that did to the people? Oh, shit. We can change. There's hope. We gonna win. Yeah, we gonna win. Because we said we ain't gonna do it. And then the ANC is like, well, let's burn the passes. But Sobukwe, the Pan Africanist Congress of Azania, the one they don't talk about these days, the one that won a minimal amount is still around in the elections we talked about this year. The ones in which the African National Congress has now gotten in bed with the Democratic Alliance, which is the remnants of the old National Party, the damn apartheid people themselves. They got in bed with those white people. Milton Alamadi, Baba Milton asked that question last night of the director. What do you do? What would Sobukwe say about the fact that the ANC is doing exactly why they had to split with the ANC? You'd have made alliance with these people who are open enemies, not because they are white, but because they are white supremacists. Now they changed the language. Oh no, we're for liberalizing the economy. Or we're for free market value. Or we're for getting the economy away from state control of private industry and creating more. And then you get American Negroes parroting that BS. No, Robert Sobukwe was a socialist. They talk about that as well. But the point I'm trying to make is this. This is where you then have to write the history to fit the narrative rather than tell the truth. You're playing the game, not telling the truth. And in 1960, they said the Sharpeville massacre. Police killed 69 people marching on the Sharpeville police station to protest the pass laws. The pass laws are temporarily lifted in an attempt to diffuse the situation, but Chief Albert Luthuli takes it as an opportunity to burn his passbook, prompting a wave of similar burnings. The pass laws are reinstated on April 6th. Do you really? Where's Sobukwe? Where's Sobukwe in this big ass book? So now I'm looking for the picture of Sobukwe. Plenty of pictures of him. No recordings. They got the Sharpeville massacre. They have the graves of people. These are members of the PAC and those who are aligned with them who got killed at Sharpeville. I'm still looking. I'm looking. Nothing. Okay. There's Chief Luthuli there. Okay. I see people marching. I'm looking for Sobukwe. I'm looking for Sobukwe. Nope. Here we are still. There's Nelson Mandela with Nelson Mandela's mother with Winnie Mandela. They're going into the trial that's also talked about in The Sun Will Rise. I'm looking for Sobukwe. I'm looking for Sobukwe. I'm looking for Sobukwe. They got apartheid, the lady scrubbing the steps, and whites only. Okay, I'm looking for Sobukwe. I'm looking for Sobukwe. I'm looking for Sobukwe. No Sobukwe. No Sobukwe. No Sobukwe. No Sobukwe. No Sobukwe. Like the Panthers were stripped naked in Philadelphia. Got the brothers against the wall here. All the photographs. No Sobukwe. 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 Let me tell you something. This is how it goes. Today in South Africa, you may hear about Nkonto Wesizwe, the spear of the nation, the arm wing of the ANC, but when you hear about Poko, Poko was the armed wing of the Pan Africanist Congress. When you hear somebody in South Africa refer to South Africa as Azania, they probably with the Pan Africanist Congress. They have successfully narrated that struggle in a way that does not offend. And I'm telling you, as somebody who's been there a number of times and observed and sat with and asked and listened, the narrative, whether it be South Africa or here, you can't compromise. You got to tell the truth, just like this child in Kosia X said. And that's the dilemma we're facing in today as we get into this new year, because it's going to be a lot of choices between playing the game and telling the truth. I'm going to tell you right now, the one that ends up in a dead end. We can stop for there, probably.
When you think about this man as an educator, a teacher in a classroom who stood up or stood against injustice and lost his job.
Yeah.
I think about how many of us in the classroom would put our jobs in jeopardy to tell the truth to our students, and then got arrested and put in jail. Right. And refused to say, I'm for this injustice. I'm going to stand. And like you said, every year he had to come back. It's like Kunta Kinte, Toby.
Yes.
At some point, he never was Toby.
Never. Never, never, except in a country now where, and Cornel West does this very interesting near the beginning of the film. He says, you know, Cornel can be real theatrical, so I'm not trying to match that energy. I'll just repeat what he said generally. He said, the first time I met Nelson Mandela, I asked him about Robert Sobukwe. He said, Cornel said, Mandela looked at him and smiled and said, he was quite a man. And then Cornel said, yeah, his name and your name should never mention one without the other. So he said, Mandela looked at him, smiled, didn't say anything else. Nelson Mandela knew damn well who Robert Sobukwe was. And he made a political choice, and I'm not critiquing the choice he made or didn't make, but let's be very clear. Play the game or tell the truth. There are real choices to be made. There are statues of Nelson. We both seen them. We see them. You go outside the mall and outside. In fact, they call it the Nelson Mandela statue in front of the I'll think of the name of the mall in a minute. But I call it the free Nelson Mandela statue. Why? Not because he is in prison, but because Nelson Mandela can come in this mall and get anything free. But all the rest of y'all gonna pay bonus prices because it's in the Tony suburb of Johannesburg. And so there is no statue of Robert Sobukwe. This is the man who made it. Sharpeville is what leads to everything else. Steve Biko, Soweto leads to everything else. Sobukwe. Nah, we can't build no statues because the thing that animates the struggle in South Africa today is the thing that was in Robert Sobukwe's time.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
That I had to research him before today.
Yes.
Never heard the name. So today you built a statue to Sobukwe. And
we built a statue in our lives.
Today a statue was built that can never be destroyed.
Ashe. Oh, let me mention just one thing right quick, Pop. These are two pieces that I got in South Africa in a used bookstore, one in Cape Town, another in Johannesburg, hands and knees, going through pamphlets. I don't even think these are in print anymore, but I will show you just in case you ever see them. We know we're global. This is S.E.M. Feko. He was a former diplomat at the United Nations in Geneva, a historian. Feko's book, The Land is Ours, The Political Legacy of Mangaliso Sobukwe. Anytime you see this symbol, this is the symbol of the Pan Africanist Congress of Azania. The Land is Ours. This is an important book if you can get your hands on it. Also, this little book by Baba Mokalake Intlo Idibe. It's called Here is a Tree. Again, the symbol of the Pan Africanist Congress, the political biography of Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe. And in this book, this is another famous phrase by Sobukwe. Here he is with his wife, Veronica. There's Prof. Sobukwe in the Pretoria Central Prison as a younger man. He had a famous speech he gave where he said, here is a tree. It is an African tree planted in African soil, drawing from the water of the continent of Africa. Here is a tree. In other words, its shade protects. We are the leaves, we are the roots, and we are the branches of a tree. Here is a tree. In other words, it's a powerful thing. So yeah, what do you do when you're faced with that dilemma? And like I said, this young person here in Kosi is about the same age Sobukwe is when he gave that speech that I read from the beginning. You know, her response and Sobukwe's response are indistinguishable in a way. You tell the truth. That doesn't mean that you go out and say, I'm gonna firebomb this, or I'm gonna no. It does mean, however, that quietly on the page every day on Sirius XM in the afternoon, you say, this is how I see it. Let's talk about it and let's keep going. I'm not going to change. Otherwise, you might find yourself on your knees at Mar-a-Lago, coolly negotiating between the thighs of the current president of the United States so you can go back on Morning Joe and act as if, I'm sorry, that phrase is from The Last Poets. Here is the people in the pro, coolly negotiating between the thighs of the police. Yeah, Joe, Mika, we know the choice you made, but we have to make a different choice. We have an obligation to our ancestors and to our children.
And when you tell that truth in community, it's not so scary. Let it not just be one person that sacrifices everything.
That's right.
Let it be all of us.
That's right.
They can't do away with all of us.
They can't. And we know why, but we know because they have tried. Oh, I mean, I wish I could find, you had
and how powerful is that quiet truth? That man wasn't out there protesting and throwing stuff or whatever. They put him in jail simply for saying this is wrong.
Which shows you, thank you, Prof, which shows you the power of an idea. Sobukwe ain't never slapped nobody. Sobukwe never raised his voice. Sobukwe, by all accounts, a very generous spirit. Even the white people had him captive. Was like, you can't say the man is not. In fact, one of the white boys said, I liked him. And they said, what are you talking about? You got to know about I like Sobukwe. He never read. And they were terrified. We sat, Prof, in the parliament in Cape Town and listened as they told the story of when they passed the Robert Sobukwe law. And the students are sitting there like, what? I intentionally didn't tell them that story. I want y'all to hear this story sitting here because you've been to the place where the man was and you heard, but now sitting here, and they got in that. Imagine going to Congress and they passed the Karen Hunter law.
Oh, no.
Or the Grant Carr law.
Yeah, do that one.
One person. Is it, what did she do? No, it's not about what, it's the fact that she's alive. And guess what? You can stay in your house. In fact, we'll bring you your food. But what you can't do, you can't be on the radio. We ain't gonna show your picture nowhere. Every tape that ever had your voice, there's no recording been found of Robert Sobukwe's work. And he was under surveillance his whole damn adult life, and there's not one recording. They wiped it clean. He's still that terrifying.
It tells you how powerful truth is.
No question. No question. Anyway, that's the day.
I love you.
I love you too. Oh, thank you. I know for Dr. Garvey, we got about a month. Joe Biden, pardon Marcus Garvey. I was reading the book that you had him on to discuss. That is a great book. Paul's in there.
Everybody's in it. I was like, it's a great, Ta-Nehisi even does the forward. I mean, get the book. But more importantly, let's put pressure. This is one thing. I mean, you pardoned Hunter. That's good. Yeah. But yeah, now, come on now.
All the people in jail for weed and Marcus Garvey.
I'm gonna even put out Assata Shakur.
Why not?
Like Mumia. Like, come on.
Mumia, all political.
Just everybody off. Just
right.
Marilyn Mosby. Let's.
Come on.
Why not?
Well, but anyway, we call for it. Love you.
Love you too. All right.
See y'all later.
Thank you, Dr. Carr. Thank you all. Have a great weekend.